I do this video in our coach's office here, where we had a lot of good times, a lot of laughs, a lot of talks.
This video is something that Ron really would have enjoyed doing. He loved being in front of the camera, talking to people, sharing his thoughts, his ideas, his philosophies. He probably would have been the first person to sign up to do something like this.
It's incredibly hard making this video, and it's hard to reflect on such a great man in such a short, I guess, a short clip.
It's hard to put into words just how you feel with such a profound and shocking loss that you're just not prepared for. You know, all last week, it's kind of like the last thing you think about before you go to bed and the first thing you think about when you wake up.
You can't summarize Ron in one sentence. Ron had so many different roles as a person. He was a family man, a husband, a teacher, a coach, a friend, and Ron Jones was just good at all those things, and he took pride in being the best at those things.
A lot of names for Ron. It was Jonsie, Ronald, Ron, Coach. He answered to them all.
We had just had a PE meeting that day that he passed away online. He looked great. He was great spirits. Everybody's busting each other's chops. Just really shocking to find out a couple of hours later that he was gone.
Ron was just such a good, solid, rounded human being.
He lived what he believed. He lived what he spoke. The outpouring that's come from so many places across the state, obviously locally, but every place he's been, I'm not the only one that believes that.
That's one of the things that makes him such a great person and made him such a great person, and one of the reasons why he's remembered the way that he is.
I think it's easy to get wrapped up in how great a coach he was. But I think his legacy should be how great a human being he was.
Coach Ron Jones, what can you really say? I've known Ron since he was a high school football player here at Hoosick Falls himself.
I've had the privilege over the last 35 years of calling Ron Jones one of my best friends, and over the years, through childhood and through the high school years and college years.
I first met Jonsie when I was a junior in high school, and we were playing football and baseball against each other, and needless to say, we weren't good friends back then. We were kind of rivals.
Ron and I did have the pleasure of playing football together back in 1986. Ron was our starting quarterback. I was the backup quarterback.
I watched him come up through, develop as a great football player in his own right, go on to college and play.
It wasn't until we were both at Cortland State where we played on the same football team. And then Ron's senior year, my junior year, we shared an apartment on Groton Ave and just had so many fun times and shared so many laughs.
I knew Ron from way back in our Cortland College days. He was a year behind me. He ended up living right next door to a good friend of mine from Stillwater, and then both being phys ed majors, you know, and guys from the same small school league. We just naturally hit it off, and you know, hung out all through college and ever since.
We're sitting here on the campus of East Stroudsburg University in Pennsylvania, This is where we met Jonsie in 1992 when he was here for grad school and coaching football here. Began a lifelong friendship of the past 28 years. Even with the miles and the distance between us, we've kept in touch all this time.
When we were in high school together, Ron was one of the only guys that had a car in our group, and so that car was the focus of a lot of fun, a lot of pranks. Ron would think nothing of throwing 4 or 5 of us in there, stuffing us in there, and we'd head off to the movies or to the quarries.
Hey, this is Main Street, Strasburg. This is where Jonsie and all of our friends went up and down Main Street. Behind me you see floods, where Jonsie would get hot wings, very hot wings, and sweat profusely.
I remember one time we had a big snowstorm, and Bobby Pine and I, we thought we were funny. We stuffed snow all around it, on top of it, and you could hardly see the car. And Ron thought he'd be able to just drive away. And however, he didn't realize that Bob and I had also packed a bunch of snow underneath it. He would never give us the pleasure of knowing how long it took him to get out of that jam.
We'd sit around in college speculating on where we thought we might end up teaching, or who to be coaching with, and where we would all end up.
And we would hang out and have a good time, see a band, see them play some Kiss that Jonsie loved, and dance, and just hang out and be together. A lot of fond memories here.
Probably didn't compare to the anger he had when Piner left a dirty diaper in the middle of August under Ron's back seat.
The funny thing is, I ended up getting a job at Ron's hometown of Hoosick Falls, while he went out and hit the college coaching circuit, doing some assistant coaching jobs at some various colleges. My brother went with him to a couple of those.
We each got a couple different coaching jobs at a few different spots before being reunited again at Norwich University, where Ron was the offensive line coach and I was the defensive line coach, and we shared an apartment once again there. And then throughout the years, while Ron was at Hoosick Falls and I was at Glens Falls, we remained close friends.
Halloween parties, our ski trips. When we came to Hoosick Falls, he always made us feel welcome there, introduced us to all his friends, gave us a tour of Hoosick Falls.
Hot wings and beer.
Let us know about Hoosick Falls was known for making reapers.
Reapers at Chester A. Arthur.
Finally, a job opened up at Hoosick Falls, his hometown, and he put in for it. It was 1996. I remember both of us being so excited, thinking, "Oh my God, we could actually spend our careers together here." So I went through the interview process, and before you know it, he got the job. So pumped, so excited of everything that we could do together and run a sports program, and it turned out to be everything we hoped it would.
We knew Ron as Mr. Jones, a dedicated elementary physical education teacher with a huge smile and a booming voice.
Ron and I both went to Hoosick Falls High School together. He was a few grades ahead of me, so our paths really never crossed until I was hired a few years after he was. From that point on, we worked very closely together.
I met Ron in 1996, September of 96. We were both hired full-time that year. I was part-time prior to that, and we were tenured together on June 22nd, 1999. That was a good day.
Many of our students thought that we were married. We did get engaged the same year. We got married the same year, just not to each other like many of our students thought.
We both had the pleasure of knowing Ron Jones for approximately 2 decades.
We chose to share our memories here outside the elementary gym because this is where Ron and his colleagues stood every morning smiling as they welcomed the students.
Every morning in school we had hall duty with a couple of other teachers, Mr. Connolly and Mrs. Campbell. We would get to see the kids walk in at the start of the day.
Ron, Landon, Denise, and I, we had a lot of fun, shared a lot of stories, shared a lot of laughs.
Ron had a special way of connecting with all students and went above and beyond to build relationships with the students who needed him most.
One thing Ron would do that was really special was he would seek out kids that weren't smiling. And as the kids walked down the hallway, he would stop and he would get those kids to smile.
So many times that I would go down to ask even Coach Landon or Coach Jones in the morning a question, and Ron would be in the hallway with the little kids running back and forth and slapping them all five, and they would jump up, and they loved him as much as I think he loved them.
He knew how important the start of each day was and a kid's mindset going into school, and Ron went out of his way to make sure those kids all had a smile on their face before they stepped in their classroom.
When the Pledge of Allegiance started, we would all stop what we were doing and say the pledge. And any of the kids that stop and say the pledge in the hallway, after we were done, Ron would make it a point to thank them for stopping and doing the right thing.
I think that he started that love back when they were in kindergarten, first and second grade, and it just continued on and watch those kids graduate. So it became like those kids were his kids too.
And that's something I'll never forget about Ron. And I know a lot of the kids that were stopped by Ron will never forget that either.
It's a great way to start your day off right, saying hi to the kids and hi to each other, and really put you in the mood for teaching.
Ron taught his students that it was not important to be the best, but rather to try your best. And he modeled this in everything that he did.
Try your best, do your best, be your best.
With the exception of maybe the dance unit, because rumor has it he would not lead that one.
When we do our dance unit and watching him try to do some of the dances, the Macarena, Cotton Eye Joe, he did not mind laughing at himself or, acting a little goofy, make the kids smile to get them engaged into the lesson.
He had an amazing amount of energy and enthusiasm that he brought to the elementary school.
During our gymnastics unit, after our first day of stretching 9 classes, and then coming in the next morning and neither one of us is able to walk. I think he even pulled a muscle one time. His hats, he first started out wearing visors. Then he transitioned to the famous blue hat that he's most known for.
He always wore that stupid hat. I actually told Coach Campbell today that I had one of those hats before Ron did, but one day I came and I saw Ron in that hat, and I threw mine away once I saw him with it.
His most recent love for sunflower seeds.
If you were outside, you knew he was around because there was a trail of sunflower seeds around everywhere.
All you had to do was look down and you would know that he was there. A lot of our memories are around field day time. Ron, like I said, loved talking to people, so he was our MC for our opening ceremonies. He loved getting the kids all riled up when it was time to do our color chant to see which group of kids could be the loudest. His description of a double elimination tug of war.
Gonna miss him over-explaining the double elimination tournament for tug of war at field day. It was always a highlight of the year that we looked forward to.
His explanation took longer than the actual tug of war event.
As we'd stand behind him giggling while he explained to a bunch of first graders how the double elimination tournament was going to work, and it was right over their head.
And we picked on him a lot about that.
He went through the whole process of the double elimination tournament. We always got a kick out of that.
I don't know if he loved having false starts, but it seemed like he had a lot of false starts over the years, which always entertained the rest of us that were out there.
Ron focused on developing great people, not just great athletes.
He served not only as a teacher, but as a mentor and a father figure to many of our students.
Ron did tell us a story that happened to him one year before a field day event was about to take place. He decided to use the restroom outside in the concession stand, and somehow he got locked in. Now, I don't remember exactly how he got out. I just remember him saying that he was just happy that he didn't have to use the microphone to call for help.
I've had the privilege and honor of coaching side by side with Coach Jones for the past 20 years. He was a great friend and a great mentor to me. And I truly was a sponge when I was around Coach Jones, soaking up all of his knowledge.
12 years ago, I moved to Hoosick Falls, and Ron took me into the football program. Ron treated me like I was his son, as he did with every child and every player that he came into contact with.
In my early 20s, when I first started coaching, Coach Jones taught me what it took to be a good coach: hard work, dedication, commitment. As time went on, I learned the X's and O's of the game from a true student of the game, as Coach was always evolving, always studying and growing and learning himself.
I had the good pleasure of meeting Ron almost 25 years ago at the University of Albany football camp when I was the head coach at Troy High School. Ron came over and introduced himself as the new coach at Hoosick Falls. Watching him coach and interact with his players and staff that week, I knew that they had hired the right guy.
Ron and I shared similar backgrounds. We were both fortunate enough to play for great high school football coaches who wanted to not only develop us into the best football players we could be, but develop us into men who could be successful when their playing days were finished. We got into coaching largely because of these two men, Ken Baker from Hoosick Falls and Gary Vanderzee from Ravenna, and we continued that philosophy as we moved on with our coaching career.
I met Ron Jones in 1997 and became an immediate fan. He later joined my football committee and became my self-proclaimed conscience.
Ron wasn't only a great football coach, but he was a great all-around guy. He loved the game of football, like so many of us, but he wasn't just a coach. I believe Albert Einstein once said, "It's not what you can take from this life, it's but what you can give it." Jonsie gave it his all each and every day.
He was a fierce competitor. He was well organized. He was prepared. He put his players in a position to be successful, but win or lose, he carried himself with class and dignity. He demanded that of his players, and he got it in return.
You talk to any other coach from any other team in the league, in the state that knew him, they respected Ron. They respected his teams. They respected what he did as a coach. They respected what his players did on the field.
His endless energy, passion to succeed, and his highest level of integrity made him the perfect role model for the young men that would call him coach, mentor, and friend.
If there's one thing I found in life, it's very difficult to find good mentors. And when you do find one, you hang on and you soak up as much as you can. And that's exactly what happened through this whole journey with Coach and I.
I met Ron Jones about 12 years ago. I went to my football meeting after becoming the head varsity coach at Tamarack. It was my first meeting 12 years ago, and he was one of the first guys I met.
You only had to know him for 5 minutes, and he made you feel comfortable. He made you feel like a special person.
Talked to him easy as soon as I met him for about 10 minutes. Kind of like I'd known him for 10 years. Helped me out with different things, any questions I had about being a new head coach. And I can remember the first thing he ever said to me. Well, one of the first things he ever said to me is, "I'm glad you're here." He thought I was going to be good for Tamarack football. And he told me I had an uphill battle because Tamarack was a soccer town, but he thought I could do it.
Coach was very involved in taking me to recruitments and getting me in contact with the right people to get the questions that I need answered.
I really got to know Ron in the last 6 months because of a merger that was taking place between our two schools. Both our schools needed this merger. His was a little ahead of mine, with numbers, but we were going to be there in a couple of years. And he kind of opened my eyes to how much we needed this. And he was right. This was his vision before his sudden passing. And I got to tell you, I think he was spot on.
Ron was a true and genuine guy, and you always knew where you stood with Ron or knew what he was thinking because he was going to tell the truth.
If I started to veer off the reservation, he'd reel me right back in. And I'm like, man, this guy's good. And I couldn't wait to learn from him.
Or I was trying to help him really build the weight room, get the program going. He had big visions of what he wanted to do.
He was just so detailed and always on point, and always had a plan behind what he wanted to achieve.
He wasn't afraid to make the tough call or the tough decision. as long as he believed it was the right decision.
Ron challenged his players. He made them better. He challenged them to be better. You can see that in his alumni. You can see that in his players that return. You can see it in the players that were about ready to leave. They left it all on the field. They wanted to win. They wanted to compete for him.
He was always looking out for him. Now, that being said, he wouldn't walk on eggshells with them, but he would give them everything he had in his heart and in his soul to help them attain success.
He was a very organized person. You wouldn't know it when you first met him, but as AD, I would get email after email with Excel spreadsheets, and if I misplaced one or couldn't find it, and I asked Ron for something, that would be his first thing. I sent you that back on August 24th. And yeah, sure enough, I would find it.
Organized, perfectionist.
Everything was down to the minute. He would, if I would ask him like, okay, away games, what time you want the bus to leave? It wouldn't be like 4 o'clock or wouldn't be 3:30. It would be like 3:45 or 3:42.
Man, this guy was super organized.
His practice schedule, it seemed like they were always in motion. Whistle blow, boom, on to the next thing, on to the next thing, on to the next thing.
His accomplishments alone on the sideline would put him on the Mount Rushmore of Section 2 football.
When it comes to football, Ron loves to win, but more importantly, make the boys that come into his program leave as men.
He used football as a vehicle to help shape his players into the best people they could be.
He would instill a strong work ethic, a sense of loyalty and honor, loyalty to the school, the community, their families. This was all part of the greatness of Ron Jones.
He wanted to teach every player how to become an employable adult, be a good husband, and be a better father.
The coach often talked about courage, class, confidence, and composure, and he truly displayed all of those things.
Well, Ron believed in being honest. If he felt that you might be going down the wrong path, making bad choices, hanging around the wrong people, he didn't mind pulling you aside and having a heart-to-heart conversation and ask you what your goal is in life. Where do you see yourself? He had these conversations with many of his athletes, many of our younger students.
And he would talk to our athletes about what their legacy was going to be when they left here.
How do you want to be remembered is something that he knew would stick with those kids and those players throughout life. And they would constantly be reflecting on what they were doing and how they were being better functioning members of society.
He never wanted you to have your greatest accomplishment come on the football field, but later in life.
I think people most remember the ability of Eamon, Chris, and Ron rebuilding the Hoosick Falls football program.
Back in the early years when Ron started coaching with Eamon and Chris and the JV coaches, Mr. Lilac, and they were lean years.
Early years were tough. They were trying. Wins were few and far between for football.
Each of them had unique qualities that they brought to the table, and when you put all three of them together, the chemistry was incredible.
The coaches and a number of us were friends would go out to what we called press conference. Go out and have a drink after the game and kind of rehash everything that went through the game and some of the plays. And
we'd go out for a couple of drinks after the games on Friday nights, and it would be a very small crew of us out there.
That started to really evolve as the team started picking up wins.
But then, thanks to Ron, things gradually turned around. Finally put things together, and then we went on to win football games like nobody in Section 2 has, capping it off with those 6 straight sectional titles at one point. And of course, those gatherings after the games got much better, much bigger.
I remember Ron and the coaches coming in through the doors of a couple establishments, and the parents of the players, and everybody was hooting and hollering for them. That was very special. And I know Ron really appreciated those times. And most recently, we've developed a word of the day. It gets sent to me via text from Steve McNeil, and I have to work that into the announcing somehow. Well, the one I really remember was Steve texted me pickle juice. There was a fumble right in front of Ronnie's feet, and we were able to pick that fumble up, I think, and my announcing said, well, it must have had some pickle juice on that football. And Ron just turned around, looked at me with a smile on his face, shaking his head.
The dynasty that they built was so impressive. It was a lot of fun to watch what they were able to do with the program in that amount of time that they worked together.
We all know how Ron can tell a story. Well, we can tell a story, and he can tell a story, and he continues to tell a story.
Ron loved to talk. He was a people person.
I've never met a guy who was so comfortable in his own skin. He loved to talk to other people and meet new people.
You could call him anytime, ask a question, or say, Ron, I got something I'd like to talk to you about. That 5-minute conversation could easily turn into an hour.
He always was giving advice. He was always a great listener. He would listen, tell you his thoughts.
Always made a point to take care of his friends, talk to them, stop and smile. His smile was the most infectious thing.
Sometimes he would talk and talk and talk, but he always would make you laugh.
I think he always thought he was the mayor, and he would talk to anybody and everyone. When we would go to football games, Ron would disappear for an hour or the whole game. He would be down in the stands building relationships with people from other communities or just Hoosick Falls.
Ron just loved talking to people. He loved to take interest in what they were doing and be a part of the community.
So I'd drive down the street, I'd see Ron, I'd wave, he'd wave and smile. I'd go to school, I'd get to school, he was there shortly after, and we would see each other in the hall, and he'd stop, and he always had time for his friends, and we would just chat for a while, and then he'd go on his walk, and I'd go back to my classroom.
Coming down here, probably 2 out of the 5 weekdays, Ron would show up here, maybe 11:30, 11:45, with his plate of salad and his 3 or 4 pieces of rolled up lunch meat on top of it, and sit down probably in the same chair I'm sitting in right now, and proceed to talk. I knew for the next 35 minutes when Ron was eating lunch with me that I wouldn't have to say much, but we had a lot of stories. We had a lot of laughs.
I'm gonna miss hearing "Hey, big guy," as either I'm in the weight room or I'm in the grocery store. I turn around, there he is, big smile, ear to ear.
And Ron had that big belly laugh that always brought a smile to my face, and it was just so fun talking to him. We'd start off talking about X's and O's and football.
Each conversation would legitimately go like 20 minutes.
Other coaches would come in as we were in here laughing. Coach Fleming would stick his head in, and we'd get him going. And it was just, I kind of look forward to that. It was fun.
Because I'd run to the store for one thing, an hour and a half later, I'd be home and I'd forget the milk. You can literally ask my wife, that happened more than once.
Secret stories of us in Cortland were always a great topic that would get the other coaches in the office shaking their heads. I think they got sick of hearing those stories that only pertain to Jonsie and I. Along with Seinfeld references that him and I were the only ones that were old enough to get.
The rides to Camp Gingercook with Ron. We were riding partners since neither of us wanted to ride the bus, and we would talk about everything. We would talk about our families, things that we were worried about, things that made us happy. We would talk about our parents.
Our end of the year banquets, we used to give a coach, every coach, because we had to honor so many 16, 15 teams. A coach would get like 5 minutes to talk to give out their 3 awards and to talk. Well, we used to joke about some people would be done in 2 minutes, some would be 3, but not Ron. Ron would go on and on. I think one time he held the record of being talking for like 9 minutes until I think I had to get the hook and pull him off. But he loved to talk about his athletes, and he was so proud of them, and that showed.
When Matt and Kristen got married, Ron was the best man, and when he stood up to do his speech as the best man give his toast, and he proceeded to take a roll of toilet paper and tell everybody he just had a few words to say, and he had them written down, and he went like this. And the paper rolled down, and it gave everybody quite the laugh, because we all knew how Ron liked to tell his stories.
After he'd chaperone a basketball game, many nights where we'd be here sitting around in the office or sitting out in the gym just talking about coaching, talking about kids, talking about everything.
He was a deceivingly intelligent person, very well read, could speak really well, and argue points with you without you knowing it. He was very, very good at stating his belief in something and arguing that point in a positive fashion, even up to recently in the last couple months with, how the world's such a different place now 20 years later. He and I would talk about how we used to speak and how we used to go out, and even though we didn't agree on some things, how we used to laugh about it and talk about it, and how that seems to be a dying art, how people can't do that anymore.
And we'd always turn to other things and talk about life, and always ended up laughing, just laughing.
You could talk to Ron about anything, whether he agreed with you or not, but he would listen and he would comment back on it. Sometimes he would be supportive if he agreed with it, and other times he would say, yeah, I don't agree with you. But who cared? Because he was able to do that in such a positive way. And he was honest about it. And you knew exactly, we don't agree, but, whatever. We would move on. And it is a lost art. And I'm going to miss that tremendously about Ron. The ability to talk and sit and have conversations about anything.
And that's what I'm going to miss the most, having those conversations and just listening to Ron talk and sharing the laughs.
Church was also a big part of his life. I know he loved Father Tom. He, loved spending time with him.
I'm so thankful I had the privilege, the honor, the joy of being part of Ron Jones's life, a life that fills this building, fills our community, and pictures of him and his family still grace our building and my office. There's a picture of Ron and Kai and E, with Kai celebrating her first communion, her Eucharist right here. We have a photo of Mary and Ray and the family when they had their wonderful marriage. I can remember coming in here, and Mary, Ron's mother, would bark orders at all of us. And I remember at Christmas, Ron was in charge of putting out Christmas trees right up here. And Mary would tell him what to do. And I can remember he'd put them up, get the guys here to help, and then the trees would fall down. And it was always a hoot. It was always so funny. They'd come back, and Mary'd say, well, now you got to nail them into the floor, and you got to do it right.
With Ron on Sunday mornings, my wife and I used to try to beat Ron to church most at Sundays to get in a certain pew. It would be funny if I was pulling in one of the driveways to park the car and he was coming down the street or down one of the other roads. It was a race to get in and get a parking spot so that we could beat each other into the church. And I remember the few times he beat me walking in and going, "Oh God, we're late. Jonesy, if you're here, Jonesy, we're late." And he would laugh.
And here at our church, Ron was a Eucharistic minister. And I can remember my first few years here. I'd come back from the sign of peace, greeting people during our Mass, and Ron would be up here with people, with those boys from the football team, with Kellen and with Garrett, with Jake, with Mike and Matt and Levi. And I would try to come back up here, and I was intimidated by those guys. Not so much by Levi, but the rest of them. To go through that wall, it was like playing football here at Mass. And Ron got the biggest kick out of that. Always enjoyed being together for that celebration. And he would invite me to make sure that I was at the football dinners every Thursday at the high school in the cafeteria. I wasn't always able to stay for his talks, even though I knew his talks were really short. No, they weren't. But I was able to eat and then get out. And they inspired me that first year, 2010, that football season. They were going to championships, and all the guys got mohawk haircuts. And they inspired me to get a mohawk haircut, a fundraiser to support the team. And I remember that after that, they lost the game. And it was so important that we be unified still in our care for each other. And Ron was leading that through the loss, because together they were winners.
Other than he loved football and the Buffalo Bills, he loved being in the outdoors. When we first met, he was an avid mountain biker. He loved taking trips on the weekends and riding some trails. He also played volleyball a couple times a week.
I met Ron Jones like 30 years ago. We were in a volleyball tournament together in Bennington. Matt Philpott called one morning and asked if I would play in the volleyball tournament with Ron and Timmy Fowler and him and a couple other players. And I said yes. Sounded like a good time. So I joined the guys and we played all day long, and we won, and then we won more. And it was so exciting. I remember coming home and I forgot to have anything to drink, and I was so dehydrated, but had a blast.
We ended up taking an outdoor education class through Cortland up at Racket Lake Outdoor Education Center. We were in the same group, shared a canoe together. Still remember Jonsie turning around multiple times to ask me why I wasn't paddling, or to get on me about paddling harder, or I'm staring the wrong way, or whatever.
Ron liked to hike. I can't tell you how many times I'd have to ask Ron a question, or did he do this, or what did he need about this? And I would call Ron, and I'd get him in, and I'd be like, Ron, where the heck are you? You sound like you're huffing and puffing. He'd be like, oh, Kai and I are climbing down the backside of Mount Greylock.
I believe even Father Tom went on some hikes with Ron, his family, and some of his friends, and he really, really enjoyed that special time with everyone.
We'd go hiking. We love the Taconics here. And Ron could throw a football real straight and keep the line going straight, but hiking was a different story. He would wander off always into the woods, and I'd let him go. I'd let him go for quite a while and then call him back to the trail. Ron, where are you going? You're going right into the woods. There's no trail there. Come on back.
Walking along the Hoosick River. I think many of us saw him walking that trail almost every single day. He just really enjoyed being outside.
One day on the way across the big, huge Racket Lake, he came up with the idea of stringing up a tarp in between our two paddles, spanning it across the two canoes, and using it as a sailboat. It was very windy that day, and lo and behold, it took right off. Couldn't believe it. We're flying across the lake. Got some good memories of that Racket Lake trip that we took. Kind of fostered our love for hiking and the outdoors.
During the winter, Ron loved being a part of the ski club, so he could spend some extra time with Kai skiing down the slopes.
And we also got Ron to go caving with us. I know a bunch of you remember that.
We were up above the Southern Vermont College.
In back of that college, there's a cave, and Everett's Cave.
I don't know if anybody knows, but Ron did have a little claustrophobia in him. Well, maybe not a little. Ron was pretty claustrophobic.
And we got a whole bunch of people into this cave, crawling and trying to climb rock walls. And we all got in. We climbed this rock wall with a rope. We got over this big stalagmite, a conical stalagmite, crawled over that, and we're all in there waiting for Ron.
And I have a picture that I keep in my office. It's with me and Tim Fowler, and we were pulling Ron up through that hole. And we all thought for a moment, maybe we better not try to get him through that, because he might not fit.
I think Ron's words were, you know, you don't want the big guy to plug the hole.
And if he got stuck, the oxygen was soon going to be depleted for all of us. And we have a picture of the three of us here with the biggest grins on our faces as we told Ron, no, don't come up. You stay down below, because we want to all live.
The last time I spoke to Ron was a hiking story. I called them to ask him about something about, did we do this with Tamarack as we were merging with them? And he said to me, he's huffing, and I said, yep, where are you now today, Coach? What mountain are you on today? And he said to me, no, I'm climbing up Rogers Ave. I'm working my way home. I'm working locally today. That was his hike, and it's actually the last time I talked to Ron was that.
I would have to say the best part of Ron's character is his integrity and his love of family.
Most people hear Ron Jones and they think of football. He's a tremendous football coach. He was a state champion coach. I mean, he had 6 sectional titles in a row. But if Ron wanted to be remembered for something, it would be a family man first, above all else.
Ron's biggest priority was family. He loved his family, and his family always came first.
He talked about his family all the time. He loved being a husband, and of course loved being a father.
He and Kai were his whole life.
I remember when I first met Ron's wife, E, who at that time was just his girlfriend, but whenever she would talk about Ron, she would look at you and she would say Jonsie, and she would smile, and you could tell just how much she loved him.
He always loved spending time with him, taking their summer trip to Japan to spend some time with his family.
What do you look forward to a lot is during the summer going to Japan to visit the extended family. He loved it.
Phenomenal family man. Every time I spoke to him, he always would have something to say about his daughter and his wife. I've never met his daughter or his wife, but I got to tell you how passionately he spoke about them.
Always talked about his relationship with his daughter. I think that was really important to him, as well as relationship to his wife. And then football was probably the next notch down, and as it should be. And that's another lesson that I learned from Ron.
Ron loved his family. He loved his daughter, Kai. A lot of times I'd look over at a JV game and I saw him over there. I thought, how did he get out of football practice? But he always seemed to make, if not the whole game, at least part of the game to watch Kai play soccer.
I think back to some of our more recent chats or conversations, and a lot of that was around fatherhood and being a dad and what it meant to be a dad and how that's the best job in the whole world.
With all of Coach Jones's great accomplishments in football and in teaching, he was truly most proud of being a great husband and a great dad.
He's a man who valued relationships more than anything else. Relationships with his family, including his wife E and his daughter Kai, his friends who have been his friends since high school, and his students.
Ron understood that life is about your relationships with others, and he worked hard to cultivate those relationships.
You know, he was one of those guys that would give you the shirt off his back. You could call him no matter what time of day or night.
I can't say enough of what his friendship meant to me while I coached with him, but even beyond the coach, as a true friend.
And with Ron, it wasn't about the wins and losses. It was always about those relationships with those players. And it didn't matter if you were the best player on the team or, the last guy in the end of the bench. He was going to establish a relationship with you and let that carry above and beyond the high school experience. He was always texting and emailing and calling and visiting with former players, and I really respected that about Ron.
Whenever you were with him, you could count him in for always having your back, and that's a pretty special feeling.
He was always a great connector. He would always put the time and energy into connecting with the guys from Cortland or connecting with the coaches that he had got to know on his various stops in the college ranks. Always stayed connected to his friends from high school. So all these different areas of his life, he was always did a great job of staying connected, whether it was, online or phone call or an email, and not a lot of people put the energy into doing that, and he always did.
I'm amazed at the number of people he spoke to. You would hear about seeing this person in the hallway, seeing this person on the street, when he was out walking, when he was out hiking. I honestly don't know how he fit it into a day. The number of people he spoke to, it makes me smile. I wish I could do the same.
He's motivated me to put relationships with the guys that I work with and the players that I coach over the wins and losses. It's so easy to get caught up in wins and losses as a coach that, I learned from Ron, you're going to get burnt out. It's not going to last if that's all you care about. Everything has to be based on those relationships that you have with those kids that you're coaching. And I've used that over and over.
Ron taught his athletes and friends and acquaintances, it's not just about you. And he lived his life that way.
And that's hard. It's hard to find a person that can really empathize with you on almost any level. And he could do it to so many people and children.
Coach Jones was a great friend. And when I got married, he was there. And when I had my own kids, he was the first to congratulate me. And when I suffered deep loss in my own life, he was there to support me.
I had to lean on him and his friendship through some of my darkest times. Lost my father, and he helped me, guide me through that. But not coach, not mentor, just Ron, just a friend.
He cared. He cared about everybody, from the kindergartners that he had in his class all the way to the graduates that were in college and he'd still speak to, whether it be on Facebook or FaceTiming someone or writing emails or just in passing or when they'd come home. He was constantly communicating with people on every level. He's an educator head to toe. And he took his best qualities, applied it in the classroom with the kids, because he was an amazing elementary teacher, but then took that to the field too, and that's how he coached. He coached how he taught how he coached, and then you start to realize that's how he lived his life. The way he would speak, the way he would work with kids, work with people, the number of students that came back from the high school to visit Ron in the elementary, and not players. Kids that you wouldn't expect, and he would say, oh yeah, we spoke yesterday. Or a kid that was struggling in the high school, he'd be like, oh, I saw him last week. You don't realize the number of contacts he had on a daily basis with kids, with adults, with friends. It was truly amazing. I actually don't know how he had time to do it.
We spent most of our days in the office talking about family, friends, and community. And I think for speaking on behalf of Ron's legacy and what he would want to be remembered for, that would be the prime order in which he would want.
The one thing about Ron is he loved the village of Hoosick Falls, the community. He loved Hoosick Falls Central School, and for sure he loved his beloved football program.
He wanted our young athletes to be good sons, to be good brothers, and to be good community members. And he often talked about how proud he would be to eventually see them become great dads and great husbands and active community members themselves.
He was the kind of guy that in making the people around him better, he celebrated in their successes.
When we had our great run at Troy in the mid-90s and early 2000s, the first person to call and wish us good luck and congratulate us was Ron Jones.
And I think back about the people from Stillwater that I introduced him to, or more recently, the people at Glens Falls, and I was always amazed that they'd say, hey, you know what, Jonsie called me and said congratulations about this, or he called me to say congratulations on something one of my children had accomplished.
We love to talk football. Ron loved to talk strategies, game planning, technique. Heck, Ron just liked to talk. But when he did, I found myself hanging on his every word because I knew he would say something that was meaningful and would allow me to become more successful in my life as a family man or as a coach.
And I think he just hoped that the people he talked to would just take one thing that he said to heart and change to be a better person. I think that's what he inspired in a lot of people. And I think many of his athletes that he's talked to have done this. He's just an inspiration.
He was always good to be with. He was always here as an inspiration, and he helped me. He would tell me, thanks for being here, Tom. Or he might say, thanks, Father. Because it's easy to be a leader when things are going well, when things are all fine and there's lots of money. And as you know, that's not always been the way here in our parish or our village. And he said, thanks for sticking with us and being part of us. And it inspired me to continue on and to give when I didn't think I could give anymore.
It was 205, fall 205. My girls soccer team had just gone down to Binghamton, played in the state championship game. We had won. First state championship our Hoosick Falls team had had in a while, so everybody was excited. We had 3 buses of people and students coming down to watch us play. We had stopped, and I can't even remember, the chicken place near Oneana that we stopped there for dinner. And I was getting on the bus, my cell rang, and phone call, hey, this is Coach Jones. I just wanted to congratulate you for your state championship run. I wasn't the AD then. I just knew Ron from coaching him, seeing him at coaches meeting or something like that. But that was a great call. He was the first one to call and congratulate me like that of the coaches, and that's just the way he was, and I'm gonna miss him.
You meet people throughout your life, and usually you admire things about people. Someone has an amazing work ethic. Someone has a moral compass that you wish you could emulate. Someone is gifted at something. Someone's a really good speaker. Ron was rare. Ron embodied almost all of those. You know, trying to think of what to say, you look at the things that you admire about someone, and Ron's list is huge.
If I could rewind to 1996 and how excited we were for him to get that job and to know that we were going to work together, we just could not believe our good fortune, and we were so excited, and it couldn't have asked for a better person to have a career with, a coaching career, a teaching career than Jonsie.
Jonsie was a great teacher, a great friend. His legacy will be, I think, all the lives that he's touched over the years in his teaching, his coaching, with his family and friends. His biggest legacy will be his daughter Kai and his wife E, and all the lives that he's touched.
Biggest part of Ron's legacy, in my opinion, would be his wife and daughter first and foremost. Then it would have to be the thousands of kids whose lives Ron touched as a student or an athlete.
Everyone he came in contact with was a better person for having him be a part of their life.
Phenomenal father, husband, son, brother, friend, and one of the best football coaches that ever coached football in Section 2.
He would have been proud to be known as one of Baker's boys. And yet, he'd be humbled to know the thousands of young men that consider themselves Jonsie's boys.
I challenge anybody out there that he's helped, touched, or helped guide in a way to find one child, one young person, one kid, and just help them out, help them down the path. Do your part, your little part to help push and keep the Ron Jones memory alive.
Ron Jones loved his family, his colleagues, his coaching staff, his players, his students, and his community.
The fact that I can admire him on every level is rare for my whole life. There's like less than a handful of people that fall into that category, but Ron was one. And I don't know, in my entire life, only having a handful, I'm not sure how many more I'm going to meet that were like him. I hope he's not the last, but if he was, it's a shining example of what people should strive to be, myself included.
I think I can safely speak for all of us that call Ronnie one of our best friends.
Just a lot of good times, a lot of good laughs.
When I say, we love you, buddy, and we miss you.
I hope I can be a tenth of what he was able to accomplish. I hope I can be half as good a father as he is, half as good a husband, half as good a friend.
We lost a great person, we lost a great dad, we lost a great coach, we lost a very good friend, and I guess at this point I'd just like to say thank you for making me a better coach. I think he made me a better person and an athletic director.
My heart and thoughts go out continuously to his wife, E, and his daughter, Kai. I miss you both. I love you both. And I love you, Ron.
But we're all gonna miss him more than we know.
I will really miss Ron in school and especially on the sidelines. He will always be with us because heroes get remembered and legends never die. Rest in peace, Jonsie.
The world was a better place with Ron in it. So I want to thank him for his friendship, and I love him, and I'll miss him. And someday I'll see him again.
Yep. Love you, Jonesy.
Love you, man.
Rest in peace, and I love you.
Coach, you're respected and loved. You'll be deeply missed. Rest peacefully, my friend.
If we could all be just a little bit more like Ron, the world would be a much better place. Jonesy, you will be sorely missed.
My heart goes out to his wife and his daughter especially. Coach Jones, you will be missed, but you'll never be forgotten.
I miss you already, Jonsie. I love you, buddy. Rest easy.
Rest in peace, Ron. The world is better off having known you. Take care.
I will miss you greatly. I will miss you greatly, my friend. Thank you.
In times like this, we often ask ourselves, why do these things happen? And I've been at a loss myself, and all I can think is that God has assembled a football team, and he needed the best coach. We love you, we miss you.
Ron Jones wanted the best. He wanted the best for all of our kids. He wanted the best for his church and his community. In Ron Jones, they got it. We all got it. And we have it always, forever, because of Ron Jones among us. Let's remember that. I know I will.
May the road rise to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. and until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of His
Hi folks, the family of Ron and the committee for the Ron Jones Fund would like to thank everybody for participating in this celebration of life for Ron. It is our goal that the Ron Jones Fund will give back to the community in a way that Ron did in his good works, his actions, and his character. If you would like to contribute to the Ron Jones Fund, you can log into the Community Foundation for the Greater Capital Region, tap on Donate Now, follow the prompts, and input the Ron Jones Fund in the other category. You can also contribute by sending a check to the Community Foundation of the Greater Capital Region and writing the Ron Jones Fund in the memo area of your check. Once again, on behalf of Ron's family and friends, thank you for joining us in this celebration of life for Ron.